360 olive oil is a popular choice for people wanting to activate their full potential. Improved sleep, faster recovery and more energy are just a few of the amazing comments received from our customers who take a spoonful a day. Make C60 oil a part of your daily routine and see what it can do for you. Activate your potential today at thec60company.com.
Hello and welcome to this David Icke Dot Connector Videocast. Well, I've written a lot of things over the years that many have found to be strange and outrageous and crazy. It just turns out that they have this regular habit, increasingly so, of being proved correct. And I'm going to talk today about the British royal family and, of course, the events of the week regarding Prince Andrew. But before I get into that, I just want to look at what this whole Jeffrey Epstein business was really all about. It was a CIA, Israeli Mossad, blackmailing operation. And this is why those that have accused Epstein and people like Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's so-called madam, have reported how there were cameras around his properties hidden and microphones hidden. And we have another example of that this week. Epstein victim confirms the paedophile had cameras in bathrooms and bedrooms at his New York townhouse, the same with all his other properties, and that a team of men monitored the feeds at all times. One of the women who has accused Jeffrey Epstein of assaulting her sat down for an interview with CBS. Her name was Maria Farmer. And she said this. The main thing I thought was interesting was he showed me where the men monitoring everything were, Farmer said. So if you're facing the house, there's a window on the right that's barred. That's the room, the media room. Is what he called it. She also confirmed the existence of a secret door, which was previously referenced by Virginia Roberts in court filings back in 2015. Virginia Roberts is the lady, it was her name at the time, who was accused Prince Andrew of having sex with her 3 times when she was a minor. And Ghislaine Maxwell, this so-called madam of Epstein, her father, Bob Maxwell, media owner, he owned the British Daily Mirror at one point, was a Mossad agent. This is now well established. You see some of the background in my new book, The Trigger. And then you have Epstein himself, a Mossad agent, also connected to the CIA, because Mossad and the CIA at the core are different masks on the same face. And so you have all these rich and famous people pulled into Epstein's child abuse ring. And of course, once they are, they make the decisions and take the actions that they're told to do, make and take. So this is what we're looking at, a blackmail operation, and Prince Andrew got caught in it. So the interview with the BBC this week by Prince Andrew was a disaster, been widely seen as such, But of course, it was always going to be a disaster for this reason. When you are trying to explain something that is, in non-sinister terms, unexplainable, then you have to lie. And your lies better be pretty damn good in a situation like this, or the house of cards is coming down. And of course, Andrew, not being the brightest man ever to walk the earth, his lies were pathetic, and the house indeed has come down. And I was watching the interview, and as he was going through it, in my mind, I was ticking off what he said, and just pondering on how long it would take for what he claimed to be demolished by the evidence. Well, not very long. The fact that he can't sweat, the fact that he doesn't hug in public, that he only wears a shirt and tie in London. Of course, in next to no time, all these things were demolished with pictures of him in just those situations. And when you are trying to challenge fine detail things like that in response to these massive allegations, then it's clear that you haven't got much defense against what is being claimed. Then there was the claim that he was with his children at a pizza restaurant on the day that Virginia Roberts claims that he had sex with her in London at the home of Ghislaine Maxwell, who was a close long-term friend of Prince Andrew. First of all, the timings he gives are not the timings when it was supposed to have happened. And he also says that he was at home with the children because when he and his wife are away, one of them, they had this rule that if one was away, one would be at home with the children. Well, of course, that was demolished immediately by pointing out when they were both away together. And it's also been highlighted, quite rightly, that certainly in public situations, the royals are obviously followed by protection officers, and these things are logged. So where Andrew was at the times in question against where he claims he was must be provable or not provable by the security logs, the documentation. Look here, this is where he was. Now, if you were trying to defend yourself against these extraordinary allegations as a member of the royal family, then part of that interview absolutely would be, actually, and here's the documentation of where I was. So where is it? Then we have him not saying that infamous picture with Virginia Roberts at Ghislaine Maxwell's house in London was a fake. Can't say it's a fake because he knows it's not. So there's the indications. Oh, well, we don't really know if it's a fake or not. Well, actually we do. Don't be daft. And so the interview was as it's been described in so many different publications, a car crash. And it was always going to be for the reasons I've explained. You're trying to explain away something that you can't explain away, though. So therefore, your explanations are not going to stand up. Now, as a result, you've had big companies and charities, etc., universities, all ditching Prince Andrew. And the Queen has acted firmly. We'll come to why in a second. This is the story. Queen sacks Prince Andrew. Monarch summons distraught Duke of York, one of his fancy titles, to Buckingham Palace, orders him to step down from public duties and strips him of his £249,000 salary for cutting ribbons, opening things, and basically having a lovely life at taxpayers' expense, amid fallout from his friendship with paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. It was called the Queen's decisive move. Well, I think there's more to it than that, as I'll come to. The Prince also said he would be willing to cooperate with any police investigations into Epstein, who was on remand in New York, accused of sex trafficking offences when he died. So, if he does agree to talk to the FBI, and it shouldn't be about whether he agrees or not, he should do it given the background of the evidence. But the FBI want to talk to him. Where are the British police? Well, it turns out that they decided some time ago that they were not going to pursue any inquiry into Prince Andrew on allegations that have appeared in court filings in America that he had sex with a minor in a house in London. How many other people outside of the royal family would have those allegations made against them and the police say, oh no, we're not going to do anything about it, oh no. Because, as I'll come to, the royal family is a law unto itself, and it's got to bloody stop. Attorney Lisa Bloom, who represents 5 of Epstein's, quote, slaves, has said she is ready to subpoena Andrew and force him to give evidence in the US, but prosecutors would treat him as a witness to help prosecute Epstein's helpers and co-conspirators rather than as a criminal suspect. Excuse me, over here. Would not treat him as a criminal suspect when one of the, quote, slaves is accusing him of having sex with her when she was a minor. What? Andrew will lose his £249,000 annual income from the taxpayer-funded sovereign grant. This is when the royal family gets handed an absolute bloody fortune every year by the taxpayer to live their life of luxury and privilege for no other reason than they were born into that family. But will keep his grace and favour home, that means book she, here you go for free, in Windsor, and cash will still come in from his mother's Duchy of Lancaster estate, taxpayer money, taxpayer owned, that should be. But no, we'll let the Queen have it. The source of her multi-million-pound private income. All this Duchy of Lancaster, Duchy of Cornwall that gives Charles his life of privilege should be owned by the state. And the people have the benefit of it. But no, one family. Andrew will keep his grace and favour home, and the royal residence in Windsor Great Park was gifted to him by Her Majesty in 2003 when he split from the Duchess of York, and the couple sold their Sunning Hill Park mansion in Ascot to a billionaire oil tycoon, wait for it, who paid £15 million, £3 million above the asking price, and then demolished it. Now, that extra £3 million that the guy obviously didn't have to pay, what was his comeback, his reward for doing that? There has to be one. Can't be that crazy. So how much corruption is going on in terms of even finance involving the British royal family, despite all the cash they get handed every year by taxpayers? Phenomenal will be the answer to that. Also, by the way, there are apparent connections between Prince Andrew and an alleged paedophile MP called Greville Janner, the late Greville Janner. And I put an article under this video which details some of that and takes us into other areas. So, the Queen has acted in regard to Andrew. Ooh, cut him off. No more royal duties. Ooh, ooh. Stay quiet for a bit. Keep your head down. Why? The Queen has acted because she's trying to stop the dominoes falling, which this situation has enormous potential to do. That will lead to the real background and the real nature of the British royal family that is hidden from the public so that the royal family can survive in power. This is the same royal family and Queen acting in regard to Prince Andrew, who were described by a news program anchor or presenter in America on ABC recently in a tape that was leaked to the Project Veritas organization. And in that tape, she says, she's talking off air, but it was recorded, that she had the whole deal on Jeffrey Epstein 3 years ago from people who claim to have been abused by him and been part of his child trafficking ring. She had the lot, she said. Clinton, Prince Andrew, all of it, 3 years ago. And ABC would not let that be aired. And one of the reasons, she said, for that was threats from the British royal family. That's how much the bloody Queen cares about abused children. And what we're seeing now is a desperate attempt at damage limitation so that this horrific family and institution can survive. I've been writing for decades in great detail about the British royal family, its true nature, and its connections into paedophile rings and satanic rings. They go back to the biggest secret in the 1990s, and other books like Children of the Matrix after that, and then a massive work in which the royal family is colossally exposed with fact. I mean, it's not an assumption, called The Perception Deception. And what I've said in there just keeps coming to the surface in terms of information as a result of things like the Epstein scandal and the Savile scandal. Jimmy Savile was a disc jockey or entertainer with the BBC much of the time. And when he died in 2011, what came out in the wake of that was that Savile was a historic level paedophile. What didn't come out is that he was a procurer of children for the rich and famous. And Savile was also, for decades, an inner circle member of the British royal family and a close friend to his death of Prince Charles. Aren't coincidences amazing? Here we have, in America, that country's, or at least let's say one of, because there's far more than him, one of that country's biggest paedophiles and procurers of children for the rich and famous, who happens to be a close friend in that period of Prince Andrew. In this country, we have a record-breaking paedophile and procurer of children who is a close friend for decades of Prince Charles and an inner circle member of the royal family, to the point where they had him acting as a mediator between Charles and Princess Diana when their marriage was falling apart. He's a disc jockey! But he was more than that. Are we really being asked to believe that royal family connections to Epstein and to Savile, who were both doing the same thing on different sides of the Atlantic, is just a coincidence? What? I'll give you another coincidence. By Jimmy Savile's own words, he was introduced to the inner sanctum of the royal family in the 1960s by a very influential member of that family called Lord Mountbatten. Lord Mountbatten was the mentor of Prince Charles, to an extent also of Prince Philip, it would seem. Why would Lord Mountbatten introduce a paedophile and procurer of children to the British royal family? Well, here's another coincidence. Lord Mountbatten was a paedophile. As I've written in my books, years and years and years ago. And this year, someone wrote another book, which included Freedom of Information documents from the FBI, in which the FBI were talking in these documents about Mountbatten being a paedophile. Aren't coincidences amazing? If you're a fully paid up member of Naivety Anonymous. So, Savile comes in to the inner sanctum of the royal family as a paedophile and procurer of children in the 1960s and basically stays there for most of the rest of his life, and was a close friend of Prince Charles, like I say, to the end of his life. Now, there's some other questions, and these questions actually lock in to the question of why Prince Andrew has faced no questioning or action from the British police. Here's a question. The police, we now know, knew what Savile was doing. Some of those police covered up for him, and others who were trying to nail him found that they couldn't get enough on him to charge him and get a prosecution. So the police knew. Are we, again, being asked to believe that the Royal Protection Squad, Police Special Branch, and the MI5 networks, all of which are supposed to protect the royal family, didn't know through all those decades that Jimmy Savile was a paedophile and procurer of children? Of course they knew. And they didn't say to the royal family, "Ooh, be careful with this one." Why not? And so he continued in the inner fold for all those decades. And Savile was not just a paedophile and a procurer of children. He was a necrophiliac. He liked sex with dead bodies. That's why he famously volunteered, oh, what a nice man that Jimmy Savile is, as a porter at a Leeds hospital. Why? Oh, because he's a good guy. No, gave him access to the mortuary. Because this network that's behind the control and direction of human society that I've been exposing for decades is obsessed with death. That's why they literally sacrifice people, especially children, in their satanic rituals. They're obsessed with death. This is why they glory in a mass death ritual over and over again that we call war. And Savile's background and what he did fits absolutely perfectly with what I've been saying about this death cult behind global events and the connection of that death cult to the British royal family. In the wake of the happenings with Prince Andrew, why aren't the mainstream media, it's a rhetorical question by the way, making these connections into Savile as well and connecting the bloody dots? I've been exposing all this time these paedophile and satanic rings because they connect. There's a reason for it, which I explain in the books, that control the system. And part of that network of paedophilia and Satanism locks into places like Capitol Hill, big time, and into Westminster. This is where the revelations that eventually came to light about a Westminster paedophile ring came from. And what's happened is a guy who appears to be a fantasist called Carl Beach was heralded as some great exposer of this ring and then exposed as fantasist. What did that do? It allowed the media and the system to say, see, it was all fantasy. No. What he said was, what all these other people have been saying that I've been talking to since the 1990s, is actually supportable by the evidence. Is it really another coincidence that people connected to this Westminster paedophile ring were connected to the Margaret Thatcher government, and that Margaret Thatcher was another close friend of Jimmy Savile? Or that one of her closest aides throughout her period as Conservative Party leader and British Prime Minister, the MP for Chester called Peter Morrison, was a known paedophile? Edwina Currie, who was a minister in one of Thatcher's governments, wrote in her diaries, I've got the book up here, about the dangers to Thatcher of having a close aide, Morrison, who was a known paedophile. She describes how Norman Tebbit, chairman of the Conservative Party, had a conversation with Morrison about being a paedophile, and Morrison, she says, promised to be discreet. Because, you see, the crime is not paedophilia to these people. It's being caught. And that is perceived by this death cult to be the real crime of Jeffrey Epstein. But there is a wider question here, which might actually be asked now in the wake of events. What is the British royal family doing, having all this power? How is it that Britain and many Commonwealth countries have their head of state chosen not by the people deciding, but by who had sex with who, in what order? That's how crazy it is. the head of state must come from a particular bloodline. And where all this woke stuff is going on, all this stuff about racist this, racist that, we have a head of state in Britain who is only allowed to come from one family bloodline, which is always white, and actually has to be of a particular religion. I wrote to one of these Racial Equality Commission organisations in Britain because they put an advert up saying, if you see racism, institutionalised racism, then contact us. So I did. And I reported the institution of the monarchy as a wonderful example of institutionalised racism for reasons I've just described. And I got some bullshit letter back from the lawyer. Of course they wouldn't go there. The head of it at the time, a guy called Trevor Phillips, actually took an award, an honour from the royal family. An obviously racist institution. God, you couldn't make it up. But then people say, well, no, well, they've got no power. It's just good for tourism. If you look, in reality, the British royal family has enormous power. And it's in the very language and labels of the system. We don't have a people's government in Britain. We have Her Majesty's government. We even have Her Majesty's most loyal opposition. We have Her Majesty's civil service administering government. We have Her Majesty's Treasury controlling the money. We have Her Majesty's Armed Forces, Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary, Her Majesty's Court Services. She is immune from prosecution. What? Do what she likes, go prosecute her. Her Majesty's Customs and Excise, Her Majesty's Prison and Probation Service. Yeah, how ironic, given that's where they should be. Her Majesty's Passport Office, even naval ships are called HMS, Her Majesty's Ship. And then, when MPs get elected by the people, they cannot take office unless they pledge an oath of allegiance to the Queen. Another. What? The oath states, this is what MPs have to say. There's also an affirmation that's very similar. To take office, or they can't. I swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, her heirs and successors, according to law, so help me God. Not, I swear allegiance to the people who elected me, but to a woman who is head of state only because of her genetics. Those elected to the House of Commons, to the Scottish Parliament or the Welsh Assembly, who refuse to take the oath or affirmation are barred from participating in any proceedings and from receiving their salaries. That Queen, she's got no power really. Under the Parliamentary Oaths Act of 1866, any member of the House of Lords, the upper chamber, I'm going to come to that, known as peers, Any peer voting or sitting in the House of Lords without having taken the oath is subject for every such offence to a penalty of £500. Then the judges that administer justice in the courts, Her Majesty's courts, also have to take an oath to the Queen. They have to say, I do swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors according to law, so help me God. Police officers administering the law. You know, those that have not proceeded in any way against Prince Andrew in the light of the allegations of what happened in London. They have to say, when they take their office, I do solemnly and sincerely declare and affirm that I will, well and truly, serve the Queen in the office of Constable. Armed forces. They are Her Majesty's armed forces. They have to say, I swear by Almighty God, do solemnly and truly declare and affirm, is another way, that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors, and that I will, as in duty bound, honestly and faithfully, defend Her Majesty. The population? No, Her Majesty. Also defend her heirs and successors in person, crown and dignity against all enemies, and will observe and obey all orders of Her Majesty, her heirs and successors. Royal family's got no power, really. And then when people take an oath of citizenship, I swear by Almighty God that on becoming a British citizen I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors according to law. Even the Scout associations, aged 10 and over, have to say, on my honour, I promise that I will do my best to do my duty to God and to the Queen. Do you know the Queen owns most of the seabeds off the British coast? You know that? And when they're putting all these wind farms in, she is making a frickin' fortune. Also, the Queen owns the whales and sturgeons, dolphins and porpoises captured within 3 miles of the UK coast. Then there's all the flunkies who are paid a pittance, including flunkies to help them get bloody dressed. Help Prince Charles put his trousers on. Bet it takes him off himself. Anyway, and while all this is going on, we are paying for it, and kids in Britain are going to bed hungry. We even have a national anthem, that's what it's called, that's not an anthem to the country, it's an anthem to the Queen. God save our gracious Queen. And in that, as football teams and crowds and all these other occasions, as they're singing the British national anthem, they are demanding to be reigned over. In other words, ruled by this lady. Long to reign over us. I've been reading this book in the last little while. And what do you do? Which is one of the lines that in these royal visits and they're meeting people they don't really want to meet. And what do you do? And it's by Norman Baker, former MP. And what he's documented, it's a very good book, are the extraordinary amounts of money that are sucked out of the British population by the British royal family. The extraordinary privilege and all the ways they manipulate the system to get even more money and wealth from the people than they are, even by law, entitled to. If we are going to have self-respect in this country, and indeed the countries of the Commonwealth, Australia, New Zealand, where they also have a head of state, Canada, who is the same Queen, then this whole institution of rule by who had sex with who in what order has got to go. It's insane. You know, one of the greatest forms of mind control is familiarity. Because when something's familiar, it goes into the peripheral vision, or even beyond that, and you don't kind of register with it. Well, that's how it is. We have a queen, we're all family, and it. But when you take a deep breath and you make it conscious, the institution of royalty is insanity. It is mad. It is bizarre. And it has to go. We have a situation where a member of the royal family, Prince Harry, can marry some lady from America, Meghan Markle, and suddenly she gets all the privileges and all the money. She was acting on a TV drama. And suddenly, whoa, yeah, oh, yes, oh, Meghan Markle, oh, isn't she lovely, oh, yes, oh, yeah. We have a situation where you can't walk out of the room. You have to back out of the room because you can't turn your back on the Queen. And you can't start a conversation with the Queen. She has to start it. It's insane! And it's an absolute in-your-face expression of the system that serves the tiny few by exploiting everyone else. We have this House of Lords, which is all part of this royal structure. People are appointed to oversee laws and legislation affecting the whole population who've never seen a ballot box to get that position. They are appointed. Appointed by political parties, for instance. I'll tell you a great way to become a lord. Give a wad of notes to a political party and you'll miraculously see that suddenly, he's been elevated to the House of Lords. The whole system stinks. The whole system, the whole hierarchy is ludicrous and designed to serve the few at the expense of the many. And here we have a situation with what's happened with Prince Andrew. And if we bring this in, and we should, what happened with Jimmy Savile, whereby the House of Cards starts to shake. And we've also got Meghan Markle, who's woke and has woked Prince Harry, causing splits in the royal family. And she was always going to do that. Good dear. Most obvious thing you've ever seen. which adds to all this. And maybe, just maybe, we have a chance of bringing some sanity to what the British royal family is and what it represents, and how what it represents has to go. If we want to have self-respect in Britain, be gone with them.